Hello. So this was supposed to start as a simple video about impossible tasks. Oh boy. Let's get right into it then. Sisyphus and his punishment is a tale you have most likely heard before. But if you haven't, it's a story of a villainous Greek king who tricks the gods and angers them. The gods punish him by forcing him to roll an immense boulder up a hill. The catch is that the boulder rolls back down the hill every time it almost reaches the top. This punishment is frustrating because it is a timeless task that cannot be finished. But Sisyphus must endure. If you personally haven't read the original story, you might have seen clips of streamers like Northern Lion or Queso playing the game of Sisyphus or pushing it with Sisyphus. Or maybe you've seen memes of someone trying to do something relatively easy and failing, only for an image of Sisyphus pushing the boulder to flash on screen with a vine boom. This character and his struggle are a common reference people use today. But why? Why is Sisyphus' punishment so relatable to the average person? Is it the never-ending cycle of doing dishes? No, seriously. Is it the day-to-day minutia of doing a seemingly endless task, however easy it might be, only to have to repeat it for what feels like an eternity? It's an interesting thought, but I don't think our connection to Sisyphus is that simple really. We all have monotonous tasks, day in and day out. We go to work or school or have our own form of daily routine purgatory. The question is, why do we do it? Beyond survival, of course. How do we persevere? And what can we gain from this monotony? The plight of this cruel king has been rattling around in my brain for a while, and if you'll allow me a moment to explain myself, I think you'll start to understand where I'm coming from. With that being said, have y'all ever heard of shiny Pokémon? I swear this whole video isn't just an elaborate setup to talk about shiny Pokémon or the math of the odds to get a shiny Eevee. While working on another video, I saw this image. It's a simple image with not much going on it. But to a nerd like myself, this image conveys more pain than I think I can put into words. For the uninitiated, let me give you a quick explanation. Shiny Pokémon are a fun little mechanic that was added to the Pokémon console games for Pokémon Gold and Pokémon Silver. The original mechanic worked where the game would roll a random number generator, and if you won a 1 in 8,192 chance roll of the dice, the Pokémon would have a different color scheme and the game would play a slightly different animation. Since the implementation of this mechanic, the odds have changed, going from the original odds of 1 in 8,192 chance to a 1 in 4,096 chance, which could be lowered even more through extra means like a shiny charm or whatever. It goes very in depth. There's a whole science to it, and even entire YouTube channels dedicated to just this mechanic in Pokémon. But that's about all you need to know about the basics of shiny Pokémon. The image I showed you earlier, this one right here, is from a live stream of the YouTuber The Supreme Arcane9s, who was shiny hunting for a Pokémon named Zygarde in the game Pokémon X. The counter in the top left shows how many soft resets they've done in an attempt to get this specific legendary shiny Pokémon. There's footage of them doing the live attempts 999,951 through 1,000,013. This story is a good example of a Sisyphean task in the most brutal form. Starting the game up, loading a save, hoping to get a shiny Pokémon, not getting it, resetting. Over 1 million times. The description of this stream from over 5 years ago says that at the time, the Supreme Arcane9s had been hunting for this Pokemon for over 6 years. And the absolute worst part of this struggle is that it's actually impossible to even get a shiny Zygarde in Pokemon X. There are other games where you can find it shiny, and you can even hunt for one in the Crown Tundra DLC for Sword and Shield. But it is impossible in Pokemon X. Zygarde is shiny locked. Or simply put, the game is explicitly programmed to never give you a shiny Zygarde, no matter if you rerolled it 10 times or 10 million times. The task that the Supreme Arcane9s was doing was futile, wasteful even, with no prize to be gained, a task with no end. But on the bright side, the Supreme Arcane9s didn't actually waste 6 years of their life shiny hunting a single Pokemon that's impossible to get, because the stream was actually a big ruse. And they were playing a character. They would fake sounding upset anytime someone would mention that Zygarde was shiny locked.
He's shiny locked. Okay. I'm actually being serious now. If you guys continue to say the shiny lock thing, I will end the stream right now.
Or that they hoped they could get the shiny by reset number 2 million.
I don't want to go to 2 million.
Hopefully that information will be a relief to you. Now the actual longest shiny hunt that I could find, at the time of this recording of course, is by J Long's Games on YouTube. They did 247,289 soft resets, split between 4 different consoles looking to get a single shiny Ralts. In the video, Long got about 4 rerolls on average every 10 seconds across all the 4 consoles, so with very rudimentary math, that might have been roughly over 171 hours of his life actively looking for this one specific Ralts, and the joy and delight in his voice says it all.
Oh! It's over! It's over! Oh my gosh! I freaking got it! Oh my gosh! I got it! I freaking got it! The longest shiny hunt ever recorded.
If all that sounds tedious, you're not alone. So why do some people enjoy this kind of task? For some, the end goal is to have a cool rare object to show off or use. It can be a visual reward for all the time spent. But most people may look at the time and effort put into such a seemingly mundane and tedious task and move on. Going about their day, waking up, going to work or school, eating some food along the way, maybe watching a YouTube video by Gurden, and resetting, only to do the same thing the next day and the next. I'm not saying life is as futile as a shiny hunt, but the endless repetition, the days turning into months, turning into years, flying by, yet still pushing that boulder up the hill. Let me give you another example. There was a story when I was a kid, you might have even read it yourself, called The Phantom Tollbooth. This story was written in 1961 with a lesson for children on the importance of education and fostering a mind hungry to learn while taking place in an Alice in Wonderland-esque world. I don't remember too many details about the book, but there's one part of the story that is almost a blink and you'll miss it section that embodies the concept of a Sisyphean task. The main characters, Milo, Talk, and Humbug, come across a faceless demon named the Terrible Trivium, who gives each of the 3 main characters a trivial task. One character is given a pair of tweezers and told to move a massive pile of sand from one spot to another. The second character is given a needle and told to poke a hole through a cliff. And the last character is given an eyedropper and told to empty a well of its water. After doing these tasks for a little while, Milo asks the Terrible Trivium why they're doing these unimportant tasks at all, as they have other things to do. To which the demon responds, of course they're not important.
If you always do the easy and useless jobs, you'll never have to worry about the important ones.
This is not the main lesson you're supposed to take from this portion of the story. Still, it does have some truth to it. That if you're constantly doing something that's easy, even if it's monotonous and repetitive, you won't ever be pressed to leave your comfort zone and try new things. You wouldn't be motivated to do a difficult task or take some responsibilities and chances with your life. In my own experience, it's 1.5 million times easier to hang out with my friends, play Ship Graveyard Simulator, then go to bed, than it is to be motivated to create something, work on it, research it, put it out into the world, and have people judge me for what I've made. I didn't come here to teach you a moral lesson today, but that story and that segment from the Phantom Tollbooth has stuck with me for over a decade now. While the other elements from the book poofed away in an instant, I spent an hour trying to even find the exact story. I thought it was from Percy Jackson or something, but no. It was a book from the 1960s that you might not have ever heard of. A dog that's part clock, I sleep. The concept of spending 837 hours on a single task of moving individual grains of sand with tweezers. But the further I researched these things, the more complicated it got. This video's original concept and title was something along the lines of Sisyphean tasks in the modern era. But as I kept researching, I realized a specific hang-up about Sisyphean task. For something to be genuinely Sisyphean, it has to be unending and impossible to complete, right? But the 2 examples I pointed out so far aren't impossible, actually. The tasks in the Phantom Tollbooth have an end. It would take longer than you and I have to live, according to the story itself, but it's not truly impossible. A Pokémon shiny hunt could be impossible, such as the Zygarde hunt I mentioned earlier, but for the most part, shiny hunting is something that could take minutes if you're lucky, or a few days if you're really unlucky. But it's just a roll of the dice until you get what you're looking for. As humans, we're usually smart enough not to fall in the trappings of an actual impossible task. So if these tasks aren't Sisyphean, what are they then? Well, they're another Greek guy. They're Herculean. You've probably heard of Hercules, or if you're somehow watching this video in like the 7th century BC, Heracles, what makes a true Herculean task is that it requires a lot of strength or power. Hercules was tasked with 12 labors, which were all extremely difficult. These ranged from killing a lion with arrow-proof skin to capturing Cerberus, the dog guarding the underworld. While many of these tasks are extremely hard and dangerous trials, at least a couple fall into the Sisyphean category. Or to add more confusion, they can fall into the category of Promethean task. Yes, I'm getting word that a third Greek guy descriptor has been spotted in the YouTube video. We'll keep you advised. If you've never heard of a Promethean task like myself before researching this video, let me give you another quick rundown. A Promethean task is a difficult task that is usually completed in an original, creative, and bold way. It's based on the tale of Prometheus, the guy, defying the gods and bringing forbidden knowledge, and most accounts say that this forbidden knowledge was the element that started civilizations as we know it, fire. In the end though, Prometheus paid the price for defying the gods, by being eternally bound to a rock, so an eagle could eat on his liver every day forever. This punishment sounds unending, almost Sisyphean, doesn't it? The Greek gods were very good at coming up with torturous punishment for crimes, that's for sure. Like, what do you have to be thinking about all day to come up with getting your liver eaten every single day forever as a punishment? Seriously. Anyways, back to Hercules. For a moment to wrap up the struggles and talks about the crossover event of Herculean, Promethean, and Sisyphean task. Hercules' labor started out as more Herculean and then became more Promethean in nature. Like the labor of the Augean stables. Hercules was sent to clean the stables of one King Augeas, which had a mortal livestock that produced a huge amount of poop. Immortal poop, that is. The stables had fallen into disrepair and hadn't been cleaned in 30 years. Over these 30 years of gathering filth, 1,000 cattle lived in the stable. Hercules was told to clean up an infinite poop generator, essentially. He devised a unique way to deal with this. In doing so, this task blends into Promethean territory. He rerouted 2 whole rivers to flow through the stables and clean out the waste. In some versions of the story, all in a single day. Now, I'm not one to discount the complexity of rerouting bodies of water, but compared to hunting a bulletproof lion and killing a hydra, this task used much more brains than brawn. So just so we're on the same page, a task can start out as something Sisyphean, and can be solved cleverly, so it becomes Promethean, but in some other ways it could be Herculean sometimes as well. I don't know, man. So we've covered examples of tasks given by the Greek gods, a children's book from the 1960s, and Pokémon shiny hunting. But where are the threads connecting these things? I'm sure you've experienced something that feels impossible, like trying to get a promotion, and it feels out of reach with no resolution in sight. Maybe you're fighting a personal battle with depression and loneliness, or even something as simple as the dishes. There's always more dishes. I think in our everyday lives, we're much more likely to encounter a Sisyphean task than one that's completed through sheer strength, Herculean, or wit, Promethean. Something that is impossible. And when I say impossible, I mean something that is truly laborious and futile at its core. When you break it down, how often did you have to fight 30 to 50 feral hogs? Or how many times have you used clever wit to get out of being strapped to a boulder? I'll go out on a limb and say, most likely 0. If you aren't even philosophical, imagine cutting the grass. No matter what you do, or how much you cut the grass, unless you kill it, there's always more. In our modern lives, we're seemingly closer to a tortured soul, pushing a boulder up a hill for all eternity than not. Yet, here is where the path splits. Some can come away from this video reminded of the world's cruelty, or how we all reach an end in one way or another. And there's no hope, like author Albert Camus. Psst, hey, actually his name is, Albert Camus. What do you mean his name is Albert Camus? Yes, his name is Albert Camus. Oh, okay. Look at the way that it's spelled. It's Albert Camus. Like, look at that. Oh, he's French. Okay. I know he's French. I'm sorry. I know that he's French. Now going forward, even though it's spelled like this, Albert Camus, his name is actually pronounced Albert Camus. Yes, it sounds like Albert Camus. Here's Wikipedia actually pronouncing it if you want to hear.
Albert Camus.
Alright, now back to the original video. Another side would say that even in the face of these horrible realizations and never-ending toils we're forced to go through, there's hope to find at the end of the tunnel, as one Franz Kafka did. Am I the first person to draw this conclusion? Absolutely not. I am but standing on the shoulders of giants that came before me like Kafka and Kalmu, trying to make a silly video about why we love watching someone play Sisyphus Simulator of all things. There's a bunch of explanations for this, but the first I want to mention is the concept of the indomitable human spirit. Of course we're going to survive and make it. We've adapted and survived for this long. The point is that humans have an incredible ability to adapt and overcome even the most difficult of situations. This is where I would be remiss not to mention one of the most famous lines of literature concerning Sisyphus. Quote, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy," end quote. This line comes from the 1942 philosophical essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, written by Albert Camus. In this essay, Camus introduces the concept of absurdism. Not like my jokes, but the idea that the universe is an irrational, unyielding, and meaningless thing. And that we as humans push to find some sense of meaning in the world, but the result is that there really isn't any. The essay goes on to lament people who have reached similar realizations about the meaning of life but ended up at different conclusions. According to Camus, when people realize life's fragility and try to find some form of reasoning, they usually turn to God or something similar. I thought this was interesting because I grew up in Christian churches, and a phrase one of my pastors said has stuck with me. If the only meaning of life is to be saved, then why doesn't the Baptist just drown you once you're absolved of your sin? According to some religions, you'd immediately get into heaven and be welcomed. However, the fact that this isn't a commonly held practice must mean that even within religion, that there's still something more to uncover and meaning to be found in the world. I'm not an absurdist myself, and I don't want to dive too deep into my own personal morals of a topic this convoluted. But I started this research journey after realizing a couple of things. One, you can't make everyone happy. Most people can find this out by getting more than 2 people to agree on what topping goes best on a pizza. But in realizing that you can't make everyone happy, it gives you a sense of peace. It's good that you can't make everyone happy, because then everyone would be the same. Or you'd be expected to do something that everyone would be happy with constantly. And 2, the world is always changing, and in knowing that, it makes it so some things do not have an end. I was working on an iceberg video about the internet from a photo that I found in May 2024. And in through working on that project for a couple of months, I realized there would be certain items that wouldn't get covered, would be placed on the wrong tier, things that might have gotten lost from the Internet Archive being hacked or straight up forgotten items. This was my impossible, unobtainable task. I tried putting the internet in a box and sorting it all out when it just couldn't be done. I saw a tweet from a small YouTuber you might not have heard of. They go by the name Windigoon. And it really helped put my feelings of never making a thing quick enough or not making enough viewers happy into a couple of images, right here. And even though the replies are mostly jokes, the sentiment still feels the same. Even a project you love and appreciate can become a cross to bear, a task you grow to hate given enough time and getting pigeonholed enough. I grew this channel to the level it is now by making iceberg videos myself, and now I want to make something other than iceberg style videos. I know that's why people subscribed, so I should just accept my fate and pump out quote slop as Windigoon so lovingly put it. Or do I make my own way and try to make other things even if people unsubscribe and complain? That's for me to decide. And if you haven't picked up yet from the lack of an iceberg video for close to a year, I'm gonna make things I find enjoyable. If that's the How Could You Forget podcast with my friends, I'm gonna do that. If it's videos being more vulnerable like this, then I'll do those. The one Sisyphean task I can control is how much I let an audience control what I make. I'm working on not worrying about making everyone happy, and just creating for the sake of creating. In the myth of Sisyphus, Camus brings up the question that if there is no meaning to life itself and the universe, does that mean we should just die? If there's no meaning to be found, why even try? Why have we persevered for so long on a personal and species-wide level when in the end, the only final truth in it all is death? Why do those ignorant of the fact that we all die toil to find little tasks to keep them busy and not think of the crushing realization that, in the end, there may be nothing? Camus said this in his essay. Without the world itself, what would man be? In the inverse as well. That without man, the absurd world cannot exist either. There might not be one true answer for why life is the way it is, but there is an answer as to what we can do. Smile back. If you find joy in helping people or find peace in God, if you accidentally start a cult based on your cat named Battlebus, or find solace in spending time with friends and family and loved ones, do it. One must imagine Sisyphus happy in his daily grind of pushing that boulder up, just like others before and after. We must imagine that we're happy doing our daily jobs and tasks. I would like to end this video on 2 notes. 1, Okay. How am I supposed to clap while I'm holding this?
3, 2, 1.
This is me, Gurden. I commented a long time ago on an old video that I would do a face reveal at 1 million subscribers. And now that seems like its own impossible task. So, before anybody else can make it happen, I'm just gonna do it myself. The world keeps moving on with or without me. The one-upmanship of content creation, the rat race to be the first to make something, to just be the best at it. I'm tired of that, and so I'm just doing it my own way like this. Even now, the internet iceberg is still being worked on by a bunch of talented people. Links are in the description if you want to go check it out. I'm stepping away from it, of course, but it just became too much to deal with, and again, I was threatened with a lawsuit, so I'm not going to be touching that project with a 10-foot pole. I also just wanted to say thank you for watching. This video, or any of the other videos that I've put out, it means a whole bunch to me. The subject of this video has been all over the place, and it's been a long time coming. But that's the beauty of creating something, isn't it? It's making something from nothing, creating for the sole sake of creating. It may seem impossible in the beginning when you feel like, what am I supposed to be making? Is there something in particular that I really should be doing? You get distracted, life happens. You get the flu. There's lots of things that can just happen to you that just stop you from being able to do it. But the impossibility of creation is creation itself, and just making for that sake. I want to encourage you all to chase those dreams, to push that boulder up the hill, and face those challenges that you come across head first and push even when it's so hard to do so. I haven't created in a long time, but I'm here now, and it takes working at it little bit by little bit. But if you do want more scheduled content, I need to tell you about the How Could You Forget podcast. It's a podcast where we talk about an interesting person, place, thing, phenomenon, anything that we want to bring up to our friends. We've talked about how Gwen Stefani is Asian. We've talked about a war for the MP3 player, and we bring up tapestries a lot for some reason. I made it with my fiance. Oh yeah, by the way, since my last video, I got engaged, as well as my friend Camp. And it's just a very fun time, and if you want more constantly scheduled videos more than just out of the blue, they come out bi-weekly on YouTube, over on the How Could You Forget podcast page, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if that's not your fancy and you just want to see me go crazy by doing an impossible task myself, eventually I'm going to be doing what I've called the Puzzle-geddon. I'm going to be putting together a crazy puzzle that is just quite truly black lines on a white background that are all just scattered all over the place, and putting it together on stream, on Twitch. If you want to come by, you can come by, chat, ask some questions, as well as for every $1 that you donate, you can actually make the puzzle more difficult by making me paint and cover up one of the puzzle pieces so I will never know what is underneath it. And you can even have me restart the entire puzzle. It's a pain, if I'm just going to be honest, but it's a lot of fun, and I hope it really makes a cool, art fixture whenever it's all done. My fiance brought the puzzle, if you want to see it. This is what the puzzle looks like right here. It's crazy. So, if you want to cause me pain and to see me go crazy, you can do that over on twitch.tv, I believe, /GordonSonoff at some point. Thank you. And 2, I'd like to read you the ending of The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain. One always finds one's burdens again. But Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. He too concludes that all is well. This universe henceforth without a master seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain, in itself forms a world. The struggle itself towards the height is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, let's blow this popsicle stand. BB, what do you have to say about this?
Thank you.